So friends, now the time to understand what is interstate supply and what is intrastate supply. These are covered under section 7 and 8 of IGST Act, and section 9 also becomes relevant when place of supply or the place of supplier or location of supplier happens to be in territorial waters, right? But when we refer these sections, these are subject to certain other provisions of the IGST Act. And those provisions of IGST Act, these relate to place of supply. Now for this we have provisions divided separately for goods and for service. For the goods, again these are in two parts. In case of domestic supplies and in case of imports. Similarly, in case of services also there are domestic supplies and there are imports, right? So friends, place of supply for the goods and services, these are covered under different provisions of the IGST Act. This is covered under section 10, this is section 11, this is section 12, this is section 13. Okay, so these are different provisions, and specifically we have section 14, that is only for OIDAR services. One section exclusively in relation to OIDAR services. So all services other than OIDAR services are regulated by section 12 and 13 as far as place of supply is concerned. But when it comes to OIDAR services, the place of supply is going to be decided as per section 14. Right. So these are the provisions which are relevant for understanding what we are going to discuss now. So these I'm not discussing right now what is section 10, what is 11, what is 12 or 13. It is just a reference, because in the provisions which are going to come, these sections have been referred, right? Like we are going to talk about in section 7, what is the place of supply in relation to goods. Under section 8, what is the place of supply in relation to services. There, what is import, what is export, all that we are going to talk about. Okay, so in those provisions, reference of section 10 and 12 has been given. So that's why I told you what is section 10, what is section 12. So now let us come to section 7. Now we can put a title, only the word supply. In the word supply, we can divide that in two parts. Section 7, this talks about interstate supply, and section 8, this talks about intrastate supply, right? In this, further bifurcation is there, that is for goods and for services. Here also we have for goods and services. Here it is covered in subsection 1 and 2. This is subsection 3 and 4. And here we have subsection 1 and subsection 2. Okay, so this is about the supply, when the supplies are said to be in the course of interstate or in the course of intrastate supply. For interstate, we have provisions under section 7, subsection 1 and 2 in relation to goods, subsection 3 and 4 in relation to services. And when it comes to intrastate supply, then it is under subsection 1 and 2. Subsection 1 is in relation to goods and subsection 2 is in relation to services, right? Now this subsection 1 and 2, what it says? This says subject to provisions of section 10. Subject to provisions of section 10. So when section 10 becomes applicable, section 10 of the IGST, refer the previous chart, that is domestic supply of goods, how the place of supply will be decided. So this is subject to provisions of section 10. Supply is said to be intrastate if the location of supplier and place of supply are in either two states or union territories or a state plus union territory. So where the place of supply and the location of supplier happen to be in two different states or two different union territories or a state plus union territory, that is said to be a supply in the course of interstate, right? Now same thing applies for services also, something similar, right? So here we will have something same which says the location of supplier and the place of supply are in different states. So this is, you can say, something similar, not exactly same, but this is similar. So if the location of service provider and the place of supply happen to be either in two different states or state and union territory or two different union territories, then it will be considered as a interstate supply of service, right? Then in case of import, so that is specifically subsection 2, until the goods cross custom barriers. Once the goods have crossed, then that is a different story. Until the goods have crossed custom barrier, it will be treated as an interstate supply. Until the goods have crossed interstate supply, or rather custom barriers, it will be treated as a interstate supply. And in relation to services, whenever service provider is outside India and services are received in India, that will be considered as the import of service. So let us take a note of this. Okay, so friend, this is specifically subsection 1 and this is specifically subsection 3, right? Now I am focusing on subsection 2. So in case of import, until the goods cross custom barriers, right? We already explained what is custom barrier, that is until the goods are allowed to be removed by the officer. So until the goods cross custom barrier, it is an interstate supply. It is a interstate supply. So once goods have been removed from the custom area and then those are further supplied, then that will be considered separately whether it is interstate or intrastate. So here what is important is that until the goods cross custom barriers. So as long as goods have not been cleared by the custom officer, it will be treated as interstate supply, and that's why on import IGST is applicable. Now same thing will be there in relation to service, but in the case of services there is no crossing of custom barriers. So here we can simply say, if services are received in India from a place outside India, it is an intrastate supply. Who will pay tax? That is a different story. On that we will discuss later on. But here subsection 2 and here subsection 4 both are talking about imports. Here subsection 1 and subsection 3, these are talking about domestic supplies, right? This is what is called intrastate supplies. Now intrastate, it is very simple. If the place of supply and the location of supplier happen to be within the same state or union territory, it is said to be an intrastate supply. But few exceptions are there. Few exceptions, say for example, within one state we have a SEZ. So any goods supplied to SEZ or to the developer of SEZ or from SEZ to the domestic market, that will not be considered as intrastate. That is one example. Other cases are imports. Imports will never be considered as intrastate. Similarly, goods supplied to the tourist within the provisions of section 15, that is not an intrastate supply. So for writing section 8, I am removing this thing. You have already taken the note of this. So in case of goods, if location of supplier and place of supply is in same state or union territory. But we have few exceptions. Exceptions, that is number 1, imported goods, until clearance. Suppose in Mumbai goods are imported from outside India. So until clearance it is an intrastate supply. After clearance, that we will see where the goods are being further supplied. Right. So say for example, importer is in Mumbai, he is importing goods from Germany, Germany to Mumbai, this is an intrastate supply, and then from Mumbai he supplies further to Mumbai person or to a person in Gujarat. This will make a difference because this is one supply, this is another supply, right? So this is intrastate, this is intrastate, and this is intrastate, or rather sorry, this is intrastate, this is intrastate, and this is also intrastate, right? So here what we are referring is imported goods until clearance. So means we are talking about this until clearance, then that even if it is within the state, it will not be considered as a intrastate supply. Okay. Then supply to or from SEZ unit or developer, and then imports that we have already taken care of. Then that comes supply to tourist. So supply to tourist becomes relevant only if he has given the address outside India. Otherwise that is a domestic supply, that will be treated as intrastate supply. So here it says if the location of the supplier and the place of supply happen to be in the same state or union territory, it is an intra-state supply. But exceptions are here. If the imported goods are there until clearance, it will not be treated as intra-state supply. Number two, if there is an SEZ within the state or union territory, then supply of goods or services to the SEZ developer or unit or from there to the domestic area, it is not an intrastate supply. And then last is supply to a tourist, that is also not considered as intrastate supply. Now similar thing will be applicable here also in relation to services, that when the location of the service provider and the place of supply happen to be within the same state, that is an intrastate supply. Then in relation to goods, this is not applicable, this is there also, this is not applicable. So in relation to services, if the services are provided to or from SEZ developer or unit, then those will not be considered as intrastate supplies. So friend, this chart is going to help you to understand what is intrastate, what is intrastate. And in the beginning we already talked about on which supply what kind of tax is chargeable. Then comes section 9, that is also IGST Act. Section 9. This is talking about place of supplier or rather not place, this is location or place of supply is in territorial waters. In that case, because we have talked about the state or union territory, we are not talking about the territorial waters. So section 9 specifically talks about the territorial waters. So either the place of supplier or the place of supply happens to be in the territorial water, then the place which is closest to that, the baseline which is closest to that, that will be considered to be the place of either supplier or the place of supply. So here we can say location of a state or union territory which is closest, So assume that some goods are being supplied from domestic market to a vessel which is in the sea, but within the Indian territorial water. Now when it is in the sea, quite possible it is close to Maharashtra also, it is close to Gujarat also, but from somewhere it is closer. So whichever is the closest baseline, accordingly the place of supply or the location of supplier will be determined. So this is location of supplier or place of supply where it is in the territorial water. Then how do we decide whether it is intrastate or it is intrastate? So by chance here, let us assume that this is the map of India southern part, and here we have Mumbai and the vessel is happened to be here. Now this is the vessel and this is the area of Gujarat. Now the place of vessel is this. Now this is close to Mumbai, this will be treated as intrastate supply. If it is close to Gujarat, then it will be treated as intrastate supply. That will make the difference, right? So accordingly we are going to decide which will be the place of supply. So how it is to be treated as either intrastate or intrastate. So friends, in this lecture what we talked about three sections mainly: section 7 interstate supply, section 8 intrastate supply, section 9 when the territorial water gets involved. And we also referred, just a reference, what is the place of supply, section 10 and 11 for the goods, section 12 and 13, those are in relation to services, right? So just keep this much in mind, read the statutory provisions, go through the material, and then we'll talk in the next video.